Welcome to Friday's edition of COVID-19. We're ending the work week with the daily tally on the 600 level and with renewed calls from authorities for greater public vigilance. Meanwhile, Korea's benchmark index appears little affected by the country's COVID numbers as it hit a fresh intraday high earlier on this Friday. Now, we have more on that later on the program. Here first is the broader pandemic coverage with our Kwon So-ah. Now, So-ah, then, do start us off.
Sure, Sunny. We are going into the weekend with a slight increase in COVID-19 infections as 634 cases were reported as of 12 a.m. this Friday. And with that, the number of domestic transmissions has now risen to the 600s. We're also seeing 32 cases from abroad, and that includes 10 from Indonesia. And the total number of cases stands at 153,789 with 2,009 COVID-19 related fatalities. In the capital, Seoul, we're seeing the highest number of daily infections since in the past 20 days. 269 cases were reported, followed by 183 in Gyeonggi province and 29 in Incheon. So with that, the metropolitan region this Friday is making up more than 77% of the nation's cases. And if we go over to our graph, we are seeing that in the past 3 days, infections were in the 600s after we had that drop to the 300s earlier in the week. So with that, at this level of daily infections, still Korea's current medical capacity is seen as being sufficient. And that's why the government, as planned, is going to make an announcement on which level of social distancing measures will be applied in which districts, and that as part of a revised social distancing system that's to take effect on July 1st. Now, authorities say that concerns over variant cases, especially over the Delta variant, are not at the stage where the new system could be affected. Now, what they also stress is that existing vaccines have proven to be efficient against the Delta variant, and that's why they are stressing for people to get fully vaccinated, and for many that means to get their second shot. And yesterday we did have over 106,000 people who have been fully vaccinated.
I see. And so going back to the Delta variant that you mentioned, which we will take a closer look at with our Song-yeon later, what is happening around the world?
Well, first off, Sunny, the World Health Organization is predicting that people most vulnerable to the coronavirus, including the elderly, will need an annual COVID-19 booster shot to protect themselves against variants. And also the general population may need one every 2 years. Meanwhile, a country that's a global leader in vaccinations, Israel, is dealing with a rebound in COVID-19 infections, in particular due to the Delta variant. With more than 100 cases for 4 straight days, the country decided to make indoor mask wearing mandatory again beginning next week. A place where 90% of recent cases are the Delta variant, the UK reported more than 16,700 new infections on Thursday local time, its highest daily figure since February, despite 60% of its population having been fully vaccinated. The Delta variant is also currently the dominant strain in Russia, with more than 20,000 cases on Thursday. Moscow and St. Petersburg recorded their highest single-day COVID-19 related fatalities. The mutation is also spreading in Southeast Asia, with Indonesia breaking record after record with an upward trend since holiday festivities in May. So let's take a closer look at the numbers. We've got here Russia and the UK at 5.3 million and 4.6 million cases in total. And Indonesia now has surpassed Peru in its total caseload at 2 million, now being the country with the 17th highest number of infections around the world. And the total number across the world stands at 180.7 million. Those are the updates I have for now. I'll see you back after the government briefing. Sunny?
All right, so thank you for now. Right, the fresh focus amid COVID-19 containment efforts is the growing presence of the Delta variant. Now, for more on that here on the local front, I have our Kim Sung-yeon here in the studio. Welcome, Sung-yeon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Now, I believe authorities have readdressed the topic of the Delta variant here.
That's certainly right. The KDCA did talk about this in quite a bit of detail in Thursday's afternoon government briefing, and it said that the Delta variant has gained a foothold here in Korea and that the government is considering booster shots to better fight the variant. Now, Korea has yet to report a large number of Delta variant infections, but other countries such as Britain and the United States are struggling with a rising number of Delta cases despite high vaccination rates. A total of 256 Delta variant cases have been confirmed here in Korea so far, with most of them being imported. Now, KDCA Commissioner Jung Eun-kyung emphasized that the Delta variant is spreading rapidly across the world and that authorities here must respond in order to contain the virus. Meanwhile, the KDCA chief added that the Delta Plus variant hasn't been detected here in Korea as of yet.
We can say that the influx of the Delta variant into Korea is currently at an early stage, while no Delta Plus cases have been detected here in the country so far.
Delta Plus adds another mutation to the Delta variant, which is already over 60% more contagious than the original coronavirus. Korean disease control authorities are indeed keeping a close eye on both the Delta and the Delta Plus. And to help contain the spread of such variants, the government is considering booster shots as well as mixing and matching vaccines.
We will make plans to administer booster shots to fully vaccinated people in order to further enhance their immunity and fight off variants.
Right, and staying with vaccines, Sung-yeon, Pfizer says its vaccines offer protection against the Delta variant.
Right, that seems to be the case. A Pfizer official in Israel did say on Thursday that the Pfizer vaccine is highly effective against the Delta variant, which, according to the WHO, is becoming the world's most dominant strain of the coronavirus at this point. Now, Alan Rappaport, Pfizer's medical director in Israel, told a local broadcaster that the data they have, including the company's own lab research and data from countries where the Delta variant has become most prevalent, point to their vaccine being 90% effective. Furthermore, an analysis by Public Health England in the UK found that both the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines lowered the rate of hospitalizations from the Delta variant by 90% as well. Now, here in Korea, according to health authorities on Thursday, the Pfizer vaccine provides 88% protection against the Delta variant, while the AstraZeneca vaccine 60% effective. Their general consensus is thus that our current vaccines do indeed work against the new variants.
Right. Meanwhile, I hear Pfizer and Moderna vaccines in the U.S. will now come with a warning about very rare cases of heart inflammation in young people. What does that mean for our own inoculation campaign here in the country?
Yes, Sunny, so it looks like Korean health authorities are certainly keeping that in mind, and they do plan to do so, particularly before broadening the inoculation campaign to younger citizens here in the country. Now, as you mentioned, mRNA vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna will come attached with a warning following cases of myocarditis, a type of heart inflammation among young vaccine recipients over in the United States. Now, here in Korea, no such side effects have been reported yet, despite more than 3.5 million people receiving the Pfizer vaccines.
So far, the country hasn't reported a single case of heart inflammation as a result of side effects linked to mRNA vaccines.
Nevertheless, the Korean government is taking extra precautions just to be more safe ahead of the months of August and September, when the country's younger population under the age of 40 are slated to get their jabs. Back in the U.S., the CDC, while acknowledging the link between vaccines and rare cardiac inflammation, said the benefits of getting inoculated still outweigh the risks. It also added that those who developed myocarditis after getting vaccinated, they do generally recover fully. So nothing to worry about too much at this point.
Right, well, that is comforting to know. All right, then, Sung-yeon, thank you very much for that coverage.
Thank you for having me.
And it's time now for the regular afternoon briefing on the COVID-19 situation here in Korea for this Friday. And while we wait for that to start, here's a look at the revised framework of social distancing guidelines, which will be adopted starting next month. That would be July. Now, the new framework includes a 4-tier arrangement. Level 1 refers to scattered daily infections, meaning fewer than 500 daily cases across the nation that are within medical capacity. Accordingly, the response involves individual compliance with simple and basic efforts to curb transmission. Level 2 refers to cluster infections within the community, standing at over 500 daily infections but fewer than 1,000 nationwide, and the response involves limits on the number of people at both indoor and outdoor venues. Right, the briefing's about to start. We'll come back to you afterwards.
김기남 예방접종 기획반장 설명 읽겠습니다.
Let us now begin our regular briefing for June 25th, Friday. First of all, on the vaccination front, here are some details. Starting from the 15th of June, we have been rolling out the vaccines for these group of people who are working as the social essential workers. There are about 200,000 of them, and their inoculation will come to an end tomorrow. And as for those who have not yet been able to receive their first dose, even though they have been completing the advanced booking for their appointments, they will also be available to have their booking starting from the 28th. And they can also do so via the website, and regardless of their registrations, registered residence address, they will be able to also utilize the designated hospitals for the COVID-19 vaccines. And we also ask for you to visit the public health centers so that you can get the vaccination as well. And as of yesterday, we have also been providing the vaccines to those who are living in remote island areas, and we have completed the process for the past 11 days. And we have also completed the vaccination for about 681 people utilizing the Navy vessels. And also, they have been targeting the residents of these people who are living in the remote islands areas, and they have been inoculated with the Janssen vaccines, which is a single-dose vaccine. And we also had many more people who have received the vaccines, and we would like to take this opportunity to extend our deepest appreciation to all of the people who made these vaccination possible as well. And going forward, we will also make sure that we give out tailored plans and policies for those who are in the blind areas. And as for Indonesia, there are also people, Korean residents who are returning home from Indonesia, and also all of the 18 people who have returned after being diagnosed with COVID-19, they have been moved to the hospitals here in South Korea. And while they were on the move, we also will be mobilizing the ambulances so that there is no further contact with these local residents, and they will be either moved to these life treatment centers or the COVID-19 treatment hospitals. And due to an increase of these daily cases in Indonesia, there are also many more people, many more Korean residents, Korean nationals who are living in Indonesia who are willing to come back to Korea. And we will also make sure that there are no further local transmissions after their returning home. And against this backdrop, we are also seeing an increase in the daily tally here in South Korea as well, and this is of a great concern. And for the sake of your health and that of your loved ones, we ask you to continue to comply stringently with the quarantine measures. And also, we also have some details on the Delta variant, and here are some updates on the efficacy of our treatment, the antibody treatment. And we have been analyzing the efficacy of these, and we are comparing these Delta variant to the GR strain. And we have seen that the neutralizing antibody that is for Delta variant has been on a significant decline. And as for Delta variant, we also did an animal testing as well, and we will also further investigate and analyze this going forward. And for the safe inoculation drive, we ask you to stay at the vaccination centers for the next 15 or 30 minutes after getting the vaccinations, and after AstraZeneca and Janssen vaccine inoculations for the next 4 days or even 4 weeks. If you experience severe headaches or a blur in eyesight, or also continuous swelling of the arms and the legs, or also the severe and continuous stomach ache, we ask you to also visit the doctor as soon as possible. And globally, we are seeing a rampant spread of these new variants. And while the identification of these new variants are relatively low here in South Korea, we are continuously spotting these new variants here in Korea as well. And once again, we ask you to comply with the quarantine measures. And for the health of everyone around you, please get vaccinated. And even after you are vaccinated, you need to wear your face mask at all times indoors. Thank you very much.
지금부터 기자님들 질문에 답변 드리겠습니다. 출입 비자단에서 보내준 사전 질문 먼저.
Right, there was Kim Gi-nam with Friday's afternoon briefing. So what did he have to say?
Let's begin with some updates on Korean nationals that have returned from Indonesia, because as I mentioned before, there has been a hike in infections of COVID-19 in Indonesia. So 18 South Korean residents have returned this Friday, and they all are said to have light coronavirus symptoms and will be now treated and also quarantined for 2 weeks. And also when it comes to the Delta variant that's raising concerns here in the country, it looks like antibody treatment has shown reduced efficacy when it comes to the Delta variant, which makes vaccination even more important. Speaking of vaccination, the vaccination for people living on remote islets has been completed now. It took 11 days from June 14th, and it involves 681 people that have been vaccinated.
I see, that's quite a remarkable achievement. All right, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Right, up next, an exhibition showcasing cutting-edge technology for a post-pandemic era is currently underway here in Capital Seoul, and our Chun Song-cho is there right now. Hello, Song-cho.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
Right, so Song-cho, tell us what is on display there.
Well, I'm at Smart Tech Korea, an exhibition where you got to see and experience all different kinds of state-of-the-art technologies available out there. So this technology event is actually the 10th of its kind. And amid the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm seeing a lot of events, a lot of products and ideas that will be very, very useful in the post-pandemic world. So for instance, you see this walking air humidifier, and then the machine over there, the moving one over there, that will serve you platters of food around restaurants without coming into contact with other people. So first of all, I want to show you the Visual Tech Korea section, where you get to actually try out for yourself all these different kinds of technologies, especially the ones like that are the elements of the fourth industrial revolution, like AI, big data, VR, and AR. So for instance, this kiosk right here, 안녕하세요. It will analyze your body alignment, posture, etc. Within just 15 seconds of sitting in front of the screen. So I will show you how it actually works. So this is the body alignment. Let's see how well balanced my body is. So I have to stand here on the footprints and the screen and just stay still, like so, for just a few seconds. And then I'm showing my profile of my body to the screen. I don't know how well it's working right now. I'm kind of nervous right now. Okay. Okay, so I was holding onto the microphone, so all right, it didn't really exactly see the profile. All right, actually it's really helpful because it analyzes body type within seconds, right? All right, so, okay, my right side of my body is actually pretty well aligned, but the left elbow is -6 degrees off the balance. Maybe because I was holding onto the microphone, I don't know. So, all Right, so did you see how effective it was? Actually, it's really useful because you can use this kiosk in the middle of pandemic. Then it will give you the analysis you want without coming into contact with your healthcare workers. And this is another kiosk that I want to show you. So this is the kiosk, and you have all these different destinations you can travel. So for instance, I want to go to 여자천 벚꽃 and see cherry blossom trees. So click on this goggle icon, and all I have to do is pop on these VR goggles, like so. All right, so do you see what I'm seeing right now? So I'm getting this 360 view of the canal, the stream, and it's amazing. And actually, the video quality is out of this world. I feel like I'm actually there. And if I focus my eye point on the arrow, then I can actually move around. Wow, this is amazing and pretty convenient, right? Okay, so actually, we have the official from the organizing body to tell us more about what the event has in store for us. All right, so she's actually there. Let's move over there. 안녕하세요. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our show. All right, so first of all, can you tell us the main theme of this event?
Smart Tech Korea is an event where you can find trends and technologies which will lead Korea's fourth industrial revolution, including artificial intelligence, digital retail, and big data. In particular, the newly launched Smart Daily Life Pavilion is a thematic zone where visitors can experience cutting-edge technologies in various areas such as work and education environment, smart payment, transportation, etc.
Wow, and then I can actually see how many people there are in this event venue. So how is it being received by visitors so far right now?
Most visitors responded it is beneficial not only to experience high-tech products and services, but also to enjoy professional and international conferences and seminars.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. All right, so technology has definitely helped and played a very important role in combating this COVID-19 pandemic. Innovative applications have helped track infections, empower healthcare providers, and connect humanity in unprecedented ways. And as we become more digitally connected than ever before, I can't wait to see how we are going to further shape the new reality using technology. This has been Chun Sung-cho reporting live, and back to Sunny in the studio.
All right, Song-cho, thank you very much for that coverage. And to our viewers, we do apologize for the unstable audio connection with Song-cho in that report.
정부는 금년 반드시 고용 회복과 포용 강화가 동반되는 완전한 경제 회복을 위하여 모든 적극적 역량을 기울여 나갈 것입니다. 또 이를 뒷받침하는 일환으로 추가적인 재정 보강 조치, 즉 2차 추경예산 편성을 검토할 것입니다. 코로나 위기에 따른 취약 및 피해 계층 지원 대책 등이 그 중심이 될 것입니다.
Exports have been driving Korea's economy amid the pandemic, and officials are now hoping to revive domestic market activity, that is, to ensure a solid recovery. For more on the state of affairs and on the tasks ahead, I have Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea. Welcome back, Professor Yang.
Hello.
And I also have Professor Oh Jun-seok from Sookmyung Women's University. Good to see you again, Professor Oh.
Thank you for having me.
Right then, Professor Young, the economy has been marking a rebound amid the rollout of vaccines. What is your assessment of the economy for the first half of this year?
Okay, well, it's been registering solid growth. This was expected. Korea only had minus 1% growth last year, and most of that was negative shock was mostly from the second quarter. So we've been climbing back up since the third quarter. We should be making, at least for the GDP numbers, full recovery sometime around the second quarter, so around now. But it's an unbalanced recovery. The export side has been leading the growth. April and May, we had some of the best months that we've ever had in terms of exports. But domestic consumption, it has risen somewhat, but still it is behind 2019 levels. So the recovery will be solid, but it'll be very uneven. So whatever plans that government has for economic recovery should take that into account.
I see. And speaking about being uneven, Professor O, the benchmark COSP Index surged past the 3,300 level on this Friday morning during intraday trading. What are your thoughts on this bull run?
It's a good news, even for me. And then there are many variables due to complexity and then diversity of variables related with COSP. It is hard to tell what is the correct interpretation of the price changes. But what is certain is, let's go back to the fundamental of the Korean economy. Then at this moment that the Korean economy is very solid, and then everybody knows that the Korean economy has a string with the global market trend. So I would say that at this moment is that the kind of the rising COSP Index is a reflection of the positive expectation on the global economy as well as the Korean economy. Here, I would like to borrow the efficient market hypothesis, which is driven by the Eugene Farmer. And according to efficient market hypothesis, the market price change is a reflection of the hidden information in the market. So at this moment, I will not say whether the COSP index is overestimated or underestimated. What is certain at this moment is that the accumulation of the valuation, which is hidden in the market, might be reflected by the surge of the COSP index.
I see. And against that backdrop, Professor O, what are your prospects for the local economy for the second half of this year?
There are many uncertainties and the variables, but what is certain at this moment is to think about the human body. The balanced diet and the nutrition is good for health. Exactly the same when it comes to the economy to recover and then sustainable the condition of the economic health. What is important is that balanced growth. Finance Minister stressed at the press conference that the first half year achievement was so significant due to the balanced growth in an economy. Even in the export, domestic consumption and investment, even the government spending, every indicator shows a positive. A silver lining in the cloud comes forth for the industry sector. No wonder that Korean economy depends largely on the global economy. And then Korean mainstay industry leads its growth as the global economy started recovering and demand returned. Semiconductor output rose 30% on year, while the automobile production increased to 20%. And the industrial production rose to 12.4% on year in April. It is a sixth consecutive increase in over 2 years. So in addition, as the economy is recovering and vaccination are in progress, consumer sentiment turned into the positive, which means that improved a lot. So as to this kind of improvement of consumer sentiment, consumers' spending increased 8.6% in April on months spending on semi-durable goods such as including the entertainment and then hobby items and then clothing and shoes increased 22% year on year. However, there remains a risk yet in the economy, mainly three. COVID-19 itself is the biggest downward risk. The pace of economic recovery will depend heavily on the timely rollout of vaccination and the pandemic containment. But it also raised concern about the rising unemployment rate, surged 5.4% in January. But what is worse is that how to control the inflationary pressure as time goes in the second half of the year will be a burden of policy making. There is a relationship between the changes that inflation is a direct relation to the change of the interest rate, and then finally the foreign exchange rate altogether. So in this way, the government's accommodative monetary and fiscal policy will face tougher limitation as time goes.
Right. And speaking about policy, Professor Yang, authorities are poised to make public their policy direction for the second half of this year soon. What do you expect to hear?
Okay, well, even before the supplementary budget, Korea had what I call a super budget this year. It's more than 550 trillion won. The main budget increased by 9% over the last year's main budget. And now we're thinking about not only first supplementary budget we already had in March, but second supplementary budget, which we're talking about. The details are not quite finalized. But right now the details are coming out, and it seems to be around 30 trillion won, which is roughly about the size of unexpected tax receipt increase that we saw this year. I'm not quite sure it's a great idea to spend all of that money right now, but the size seems to be centering around that 30 trillion won figure. Now, there seems to be three pillars of this supplementary budget. The first is measures to defeat coronavirus, for example, money that goes into vaccination and to help the vaccination process. And then second, assist those hurt by the coronavirus. We're thinking mostly of small and medium-sized businesses which got hurt by the distancing measures. Reportedly, some of the small businesses may be getting as much as 6 to 7 million won as sort of a pseudo compensation for the damage they took because they their business fell because of distancing. And then third, this is probably the most controversial and measure that's getting the most attention, measures to boost spending. Now, about 80% of the population, it excludes 20% of the richest part of the Korean population, but the rest of the 80% will be getting a relief payment, probably around 250,000 won per person, though that detail has not been finalized. And then there will be a measure for so-called credit card cashback. They will measure your spending in the second quarter and your spending in the third quarter, and the difference in spending. If you spent more on the third quarter, then the difference, you will get 10% of it back as cash or as credit card points up to a certain amount. That certain amount is also under negotiation. Government wants 300,000 won as the upper limit. The political parties want 500,000 won. But I personally have some doubts over whether this will be a useful policy, because in the second half of the year, as we go off distancing measures, there will be pent-up spending, there will be so-called revenge spending, and as Professor Oh mentioned, we may be facing inflationary measures because demand will go up very quickly. It's not quite sure whether supply will be able to follow as quickly. It takes time to restart the factories, and some of the places where we have to import raw materials and intermediate goods from, they will still be under coronavirus distancing measures. So I'm not sure if this additional money for spending measures will be spent on helping these businesses which got hurt during last year, or whether it'll just add to inflation because Korean production will be reaching its limits.
I see. Only time will tell then.
Pardon me?
Only time will tell. We'll have to wait and see.
Yes.
Right, Professor, going back to what Professor Yang earlier talked about, we had Finance Minister Hong Nam-gin saying that this year's second supplementary budget may be worth 30 trillion won. Now, initially, I believe the sum was 20 trillion won, right, Professor?
Right. As Professor Yang commented, the super budget it is really government expense has significantly increased due to this kind of pandemic. It is a situation of urgency. It is not normal situation, we already know. But on top of 512 trillion won supersized budget this year, two supplementary budgets totaling 23.9 trillion won have been passed, and the government has teed up a third extra budget of 35.3 trillion won. It is the largest supplementary budget ever and is awaiting lawmaker approval. When including the four social insurance, the deficit goes to 56.6 trillion won, an all-time record and 45.9% increase from that of last year's budget at this time. Once again, it is noted that a balanced growth matters to recover the sustainable economy. It is also noted that balanced budgeting matters to recover long-term sustainable public finance from generation to generation. We have to know that there is no free lunch in economics. There seems like a free spree in politics, but we have to know that it's just a passing liability to generation to generation. So at this moment, we have to be very cautious, and then we have to take a stance where to get the best efficient usage of this kind of budget. And the finance minister commented that no other country has adopted a universal or unilateral basic income, something like granting every person a kind of monthly stipend. Then the finance minister, he got an objection to this idea. And he also added that it is not the right time to the instruction and institution of basic income in Korea. So what the finance minister comment is that we have to admit that it is an urgency, and we have to admit that extra budgeting, but we have to take a stance of very cautious decision making where to maximize of this kind of budget.
Right, and staying with comments by Minister Hong, Professor Yang, he also affirmed that the government is not considering cash handouts for all households. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's actually a very wise move. As Professor Oh just mentioned, there's no other country which offered money to everybody. Even the United States, which had a massive stimulus program, they exempted top income families from getting those tax returns and cash payments. Now, when we look at the first relief payment that we made last year, it seems that about 30% of it was actually spent. We actually want people to spend as much of this money as possible because we want to keep macroeconomic spending up. Well, your spending will be other people's income. So if we don't want the recession to get worse, then we need to keep the spending up. But it turns out that if you give money to the richer part of the population, they do not necessarily spend it. They save it, or they put it in stock market or real estate, which may have contributed to the high stock prices and high apartment prices that we see. So, but the same study also shows that if you give money to lower income people, they tend to spend more of it, and which is more consistent with the idea that this is payment to help people who have been hurt by the coronavirus. So it actually makes sense, I think, to give the money to the less fortunate side of the population, and for the richer part of the population, I think they can survive without the payment. My personal feeling is right now they seem to be giving the money to the bottom 80% of the population. Only about 20% of the population will be excluded from the payment. I think more population should be excluded personally. And more aid should be concentrated to the lower income and people who have been hurt by the coronavirus, like the small businesses or people who have actually gotten sick from the coronavirus.
Right. And staying with that debate, Professor Yang, what appears to have been more effective? Was the one-time universal handout of cash incentives for all households back in May more effective, or were the three rounds of targeted support for the smaller merchants and for those vulnerable households more effective?
Okay, well, popularly, I think the people have gotten the idea that because 30% of the money was spent, whereas we didn't see that much of an effect from the second to fourth relief payments, which were given only to businesses which were hurt, that universal relief payment was more effective. I think that's a mistaken idea because, well, when we made the second to fifth relief payment to the businesses which were hurt, we have to compare what would have happened if they did not get those payments. It's because they got those payments, they had some income and they kept spending. So it's not a matter of not spending, but it would have gone down a lot more if they had not gotten that relief payment. So in that sense, I think the second to fifth relief payments, which are made selectively, was a lot more effective than the first relief payment, which went to everybody.
I see. And then moving on, Professor, there are mixed views about Korea's fiscal health amid its expansionary policy, with an earlier article by the Wall Street Journal claiming that the Korean government can afford to take on more debt. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it was very interesting article, and then I read the article several times. But my opinion might be somewhat different, as it might be the economic size and economic condition, and then contingent environment might be different from that of United States. But those articles cannot be interpreted directly nor politically. While reading the article, I got questions in many ways, and then we have to admit the different economic conditions. But I concluded that the Korean policymaker choose the better choice if the writer insists not the right choices. It might be needed a lot of technical concept and understanding of international finance theory and then paradigm to explain why Korea choose not to do. But I will simply touch on just two things. First, the status of fiat money of Korea, I mean the Korean won, is not the same as the writer commented. Korean won is not US dollar, not euro, not Japanese yen. And second, there is a little significance, quote, lower government borrowing will lead either to higher private borrowing or bigger economic shortfall, quote. Fiat money of Korea is not key currency, it's a local currency. So when the Korean government increase the government debt, by what denomination, by what currency? It must be dollar. So a rapid growing government debt will be vulnerable to cause financial risk, uncontrolling foreign exchange volatility, and creating inflationary pressure, not to mention of undermining the Korean won currency value. We had an experience in 1998 financial crisis before, got lessons of the importance of the how to keep monetary policy sovereignty from the experience and market knowledges. And next, I want to raise the concept of systemic risk with the unsystemic risk of financial market, referring to the Harry Markowitz CAPM model. As the writer wrote, yes, it is true. Government borrowing is not a substitute for private borrowing. But it is also true, private borrowing can be a complement for the government borrowing. The difference, the public borrowing is a systemic risk, but the private borrowing is an unsystemic risk. So from the perspective of risk management and the stability of the capital market, lowering systemic risk is more important. That is why Korean policymakers keep a cautious stand. The same choice with those policymakers of Norway, Finland, and Sweden.
Right. Professor Yang, President Moon on this Friday takes part in a virtual summit with 8 counterparts from Central American countries under the 4th Korea-SICA framework. What can you tell us about the importance of economic collaboration with this region for Korea?
Okay, well, it's a sort of an underdeveloped region for Korean economy. Central America and Latin America as a whole, Korea sort of ignored it during the 20th century, but ever since Korea formed Chile FTA with Chile, the area has been getting more and more attention. The SICA, 8 countries in SICA, they're very small countries, so they may not seem very important in terms of economic size, but it turns out that about 20% of Korea's overseas construction is now going on in those 8 countries. Further, they have a lot of further infrastructure investment that they need to make, and for countries like Dominican Republic, there is a natural gas power plant that Korea can go into. So Korea has a lot of plans to give overseas development assistance, $220 million worth, and that is probably what they're going to talk about during the meeting that they're going to have. And I should also mention that of these 8 countries, Korea has signed FTAs with 5 of them, and they came into effect, full effect, just this March. So I think that is another reason why President Moon is having a conversation with these 8 countries. As I said, 5 of the 8 countries now belong to FTA with Korea, 3 of them do not. So I'm sure that there will be some talk about these other 3 countries joining Korea's FTA as well.
Right, and further expanding it then. All right, Professor Yang, as always, thank you very much for your thoughts. And Professor, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Right, well, on that note, we end this edition of COVID-19. Now, do seek to abide by safety measures for your health and that of those around you. Have a good weekend. See you on Monday.